My name is Scott Lokers, part of the Luminex team, and welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday. We're in a series where we're thinking about leading in a liminal state, or leading when you don't know exactly where you are going. And today I'd like to invite you to think with me for a little while about learning to be less anxious. Learning to be less anxious. Part of this that's important to me is we're talking about being less anxious, not just acting less anxious. And this first word is important to me as well. Can we really learn to be less anxious? I believe that we can. Why would we want to do this in the first place? Let me try to make that case. Systems theory tells us, and I believe this is true, people who study the brain tell us this all the time, that when emotions go up in our lives, when our emotional state is heightened, that our creative thinking goes down. The more emotional we are, the less we're able to think creatively. And that's because those are controlled by different parts of the brain. And the part that controls emotions, or the part that gets triggered when our emotions are high, will overtake, will crowd out the thoughts from the part of the brain that help us think creatively. So if we're thinking about leading in a time when we don't know exactly where we are going, how important would creative thinking be? It would be very important, it seems to me, as I and others and our team is trying to get together and to come up with solutions to how do we lead and where exactly is God calling us to go. So something that can be helpful is learning to be less anxious. I'll give you an example of how this can work. So early on in the pandemic, I realized that my baseline anxiety level was elevated. It took me a while to figure that out. There were certain things that would happen, small things, that would just sort of set me off or tip me over the edge, it felt like. And I thought, that shouldn't do that. So it caused me to think, what is going on here? And one of the things I did is I asked God that. So God, can you help me understand what's happening here? What's going on inside me? Why is my anxiety level higher than it typically is? And I don't know how God answers that prayer in your life. Some of the ways that I believe God answers that prayer can lead us to a scripture where we get an insight and something we can directly apply to our lives. Or we're having a conversation with a mentor or a life coach and something gets triggered. Or times I've gone into counseling. Lord, I need some help in terms of what's really going on inside of me. And sometimes an objective person there that I can share with and someone I can trust can help me figure out the answer to that. Or sometimes it's medication that the levels in our body get out of whack, and we need some help in terms of getting those back where they should be. Or sometimes it's just simply a lack of self-care. So I'm not doing a very good job right now of sleeping well or eating well or getting enough exercise. But we asked that question. I asked that question, God, can you help me understand what's going on here? And what I came to realize, the way that prayer got answered this time, is I had been living in the basis of fear, not of faith, not of trust, but of fear. And I was afraid of all kinds of things. I was afraid of getting sick. I was afraid of going to the grocery store. I was afraid the economy's going to crash. I'm not going to have enough. And came to realize I'm living under fear. So once that prayer gets answered, God, can you help me figure out what's going on here? Then I love the question. This isn't original to me. This is Ruth Haley Barton. And she suggests we ask the question, so God, what are we going to do about this? I love that. What are we going to do about that? What it says to me is, certainly I have a part to play. This is my life. It's my anxiety. I have a part to play, but I'm asking for God's help as well. God, what are we going to do about this? And in the case that I'm speaking of, I heard some things. I asked that question, some things like being led to the reminder of, Scott, I love you unconditionally. That I don't deserve that, certainly to hear that in the voice of God, but you belong to me and I love you. And it helped settle my anxiety level, get a handle on what was happening, and helped me to learn to be less anxious. We've all heard, when we're leading a group, that we're talking about being a less anxious presence, and sometimes we just act that way. And I'm not opposed to that. There are lots of times I take deep breaths. I'm trying to have a calm exterior. But I believe we're more effective leaders and more joyful in the process if we can actually learn to be less anxious. Thanks.